Hi, I'm Liz Harper. We're back with Sarah Light, and today's guest is Billy. Billy, please introduce yourself and explain what Project Apis M is for those who aren't familiar.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Liz and Sarah, for having me on. Project Apis M is a nonprofit organization that our mission is to fund and direct honeybee research around the country and improve crop production while we're doing it. Our name comes from the Latin, the scientific name for the honeybee, Apis mellifera.
Awesome. Billy, thanks so much for joining us today. As a soil scientist, when I think of soil health, I think about building up the soil, but your project promotes cover cropping for some other reasons. Can you talk about some of the above ground ecological benefits that you are working to realize with your work?
Sure. So, like I said, we're a research organization, but I manage a program called Seeds for Bees. That's a program out here in California, and it is connecting growers with free or discounted cover crop seed in hopes that they will plant it for more than one reason, more than just the reason of soil health. And the other reason is to feed pollinators in kind of in the altruistic sense that we need local populations of native bees, we need healthy managed bees for our food ag system, but also for ways that kind of affect specific growers during specific times in the year that help with their pollination and bottom line. So I'll have to talk a little bit about some bee biology real quick. In, let's say, midsummer, bees are, in the colony, you could even think of it about it as three different types of bees. The nurse bees, for the first 2 weeks of their life, they stay inside the colony. They just take care of other bees. They nurse the brood that's yet to emerge. Then at weeks 3 and 4 of their life, they're a middle-aged bee. They're still inside the hive, but their tasks grow a little bit. They are processing pollen and nectar and taking care of the queen, etc. And in the last 2 weeks of their life, weeks 5 and 6, they become a forager. This is when they leave the hive to go collect pollen, nectar, water, propolis, and so forth. But that whole caste system breaks down kind of in late fall and throughout the winter. They don't have any different jobs. They're just a generalist bee or a winter bee, they're sometimes called, and they don't really do much besides huddle together, vibrate their wing muscles, keep themselves and the queen warm. When spring comes around, they are looking for signs that spring is here, that the growing season is around the corner. And there are certainly factors like day length and temperature, but also a huge factor that drives them to go back to this caste system and increase their population is the availability of natural forage. That's just a word that beekeepers used for blooming flowers. So the first pollen that comes into that colony from some scout bees, that will cue the colony in, primarily the queen, that spring is here, the resources are here, you can start brooding up. So queen will start laying eggs, about 2,000 eggs a day. And in 3 days' time, those eggs hatch and they go to the larva stage, where a beekeeper calls brood. That brood emits a pheromone and it emits a smell. It cues the colony in to do a number of things, but one of them is to go forage. So it's a smell that gets released by the immature bees in the colony that tells the mature bees to go fly and collect food, because there's going to be a whole lot of us emerging every single day. So it drives the foragers outside of the colony to go, let's say it's before almond bloom, to go on the cover crop and gather some of those resources. Or, for example, if it's almond bloom, to set nuts. And this positive feedback loop of more forage more brood, and then more workers that bring in more forage, that continues as long as there is pollen available. So this is going to happen. Let's say, for example, you have an out-of-state colony coming from Georgia. It's placed down in orchard. The first day of almond bloom, it's going to start that positive feedback loop. But the idea, one of the ideas with cover crops, bee-friendly cover crops, is to get that process started before your almond, before the cash crop even is ready to bloom. So nutrition is very important to bees because it increases their population. Each bee weighs more, it makes them a better pollinator. They communicate more effectively, almost by 20%. They're just simply a more efficient pollinator. So if you can get those bees started on natural forage a couple days, a couple weeks, maybe even a month or before your cash crop is ready to bloom, those bees are going to be more vital, more populous, and more efficient. So that's why having natural sources of forage out there when nothing else is available is important. And this goes, now I keep on talking about almond bloom because that's the majority of our growers, of our Seeds for Bees participants, are almond growers, but that's pretty much the earliest thing out here in California. It starts to bloom mid-February. So before February and after it, there's kind of a dearth, a period of not a lot of food out there. So you have large swaths of land that are just almond orchards, and it's very nutritious. It's 25% protein, but it's only around for about 6 weeks. So you can transform that landscape to having food for bees that's just one type of food for 6 weeks into a landscape that has 5, 10, 20 different sources of food for 2, 3, 4, 5 months, depending on what you plant and how you plant it. So that can impact that grower that year and really boost their pollination.
That's awesome. That's really interesting. I love the connection between bee biology and soil health. So with all of those known benefits, particularly for the nut crop, what are some of the challenges of cover cropping that you're hearing from orchardists that you work with? Because it seems like with all those bee benefits and the soil health benefits, it would be like we all have to do it right now, but we know that there are a lot of challenges and concerns. And so what are some of the barriers that you hear about?
Yeah, so the difference between a bee-friendly cover crop and a cover crop that is not bee-friendly isn't that great. It's about different plant selection and timing, especially on the earlier side of things. So cover crops have been around for a while, but they aren't very popular right now because of some concerns. The top concerns I always hear about are water use, or orchard floor preparation, or there being too much organic matter on top of the soil during harvest, which is in the fall. And then things like frost concerns and things like competition. So the idea is if I'm planting something attractive in my middles in between my rows of almonds or cherries or prunes, that I may be detracting the bees' ability to go set nuts and fruits. If anybody wants to contact me, I can definitely send them research papers and talk to them a little bit more. I'll try to touch on all of them real quick. Pollination competition, it's not really a concern. There's 2 really excellent studies out that show that it's not. Almond flowers are like I said, 25% protein. They're very easy to access. These are opportunists just like us. They want to spend as little calories as possible to get as many calories back in return. The physiology of the flower itself, it's very open. It's easy to land to. They don't have to fight and work in that flower. And there's a lot of them. So research has shown that when these, when almonds, for example, come on, the bloom opens up, the visitation to the cover crop decreases. There's also a matter of kind of the morning versus the afternoon. They're always going to favor the tree pollen in the morning. And these are always going to send out scout bees to different places. You and I know that almond pollen, for example, is going to be around for 6 weeks. They don't know that. So they want to always hedge their bets and know what else is out there, because when this one main source dries up, we need to target our energy towards that other resource. So if you're able to provide all kind of a greater length of bloom and greater variety right at their doorstep, right at the orchard, they're less likely to go fly to other places to bring it in. So that having that forage actually anchors those bees to that orchard. They're less likely to go fly around. So that's competition. Frost, there's some really great research. I don't know if now's a good time to share my screen.
Oh, yeah.
Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Isn't the best view. I wonder if I should increase it. But right now, going on, it's winding down. The most comprehensive study on cover crops in orchard ever done in California, funded by the Almond Board, with all the folks there you see on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
There's
screen slide so that we don't see the side panel.
Is that better?
No.
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
They are researching a lot of different aspects. One of them is frost.
Mm.
So they did find that orchards with cover crops were indeed cooler at the ground surface, at the surface level, than orchards without cover crops. But at 3 feet and above, so they had several different measurements, right at the ground level, 6 inches, 3 feet, 5 feet, I don't know exactly what they were, but pretty much as you go up into the tree canopy where those nuts are, they show that there was really no difference in the temperature. So that coincides with some of the anecdotal evidence that I've heard from working with growers for the last 5 years of it not really having an increased risk of frost. Growers tell me, Billy, I had some frost damage. They were on some of the blocks with cover crops. Sometimes there was damage on blocks without. It really seemed to be independent. So that's kind of addressing the frost thing. Also, while we got this screen up, it can't help but mention the increased nitrogen, and a little bit of the increased yield in orchards with cover crops as compared to ones without. Water is the third concern that I've addressed earlier. Fall planted cover crops, so they're planted in the fall. Maybe they're irrigated in the fall a little bit to bring them up. Maybe they're irrigated a teeny bit in the spring to keep them going, but especially in the fall, that's a time where trees need that water anyhow, post-harvest irrigation. And then the seasonal rains are watering the cover crop. It's not very hot. I think it's 99% of plant use is actually for temperature regulation. So I don't have any research to show here on my screen, but there's really no difference in the amount of water being used in that orchard because of the cover crops. Now, if you were planting it in the spring and keeping it going all summer in very hot and dry California, that would be a different issue, and that's not what we're advocating. The fourth one is organic matter on the floor come harvest. And timing and management is really the key to kind of having your cake and eating it too, in terms of being able to plant a cover crop that helps your soil, helps the bees, and it's also not a pain in your neck come harvest. And these, going over some of these techniques is part of the technical advice and assistance that I give to our participants, in addition to just free seed. Things are terminated in the spring, as early as March into April, May, or June. And overwhelmingly, my growers report that they don't have an issue with organic matter. And in the research project you see on your screen here, that's also what they have shown as well. So some of the specific technical aspects, I don't want to take up too much time, but if anybody wants to contact me, I'd love to go over those.
Awesome.
This is so interesting. And so just to be clear, this research, the increase in yield, is that directly correlated with better bee health and stronger hives? Or does it also pull on the nitrogen, increased nitrogen from cover crops? Or is it just, oh no, this is a cover crop study.
No, but it's a good question. You are right. Yeah, they're talking about, this was almond yields. So it's a good question. There's no answer because we don't really know. I mean, it is statistically significant, but is it all from better bee health? Is it all from nitrogen? Is it all from better water retention and penetration because we're breaking up compacted soils? Most likely, it's probably a little bit of all that stuff, but they're consistently finding a bump in yield, which you would expect to see if these cover crops are doing what some older research has shown that they've done.
Yeah. So interesting. So Billy, what is one on-farm innovation that you've observed that might help other growers implement cover crops on their farms?
Yeah, growers are certainly a very innovative, handy bunch. They're pretty good with making stuff. Drill seeding into the orchard, drill seeding, any cover crop is really the best way to go, but it's another piece of equipment you got to purchase and maintain. Broadcasting is a really great method as well, but you want that to stay in the middles. You don't want to necessarily have cover crops or weeds on your berms. That's where the trees grow. So I have worked with a good amount of growers that have, I would pretty much call it 10 out of 10 very successful cover crops with broadcasting. You have to increase the rate a little bit because it's less efficient. You need more seed out there. But in this photo, I believe this is actually a seed spreader. I believe this photo is just an ant bait spreader. Oh, yeah. Sorry, maybe I went too fast. That's an ant bait spreader. But either way, it works really well. And the innovation that I'm pointing out, I don't know if you can see my mouse, are just these pieces of cloth. I've heard people using boards. It's just a way to keep that seed in the middle, because tree row spacing is anywhere from high teens, 18 to 24, 26 feet apart. Well, a good broadcaster will throw that seed wider, or wide enough to get it on those berms. So these little guides can help keep the seed where it needs to go and prevent us work on the berms.
And so it's broadcast in early October. Oh, and then flood irrigated.
That was just, so what you see there, that was this particular grower, what they had timing to do. And these were actually the results. This is the exact same orchard, they did the mustard mix. I do actually think this was blooming before the almonds, but even in a year where it doesn't bloom before it, you're still getting a bunch of benefits. No one grower consistently every year is going to be able to check the box of each one of those benefits that I've talked about and can be realized. It's just trying to maximize as many as possible in any one particular year.
Very cool. So is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, not at this point. I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk with everybody and share my information.
Yeah, thank you so much. And then hopefully we can get your contact information in the show notes below and any other links to the research so the viewers can access that and follow up with more information of addressing concerns of cover crops for bees in orchards and other crops throughout California. So this was really interesting. Thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you, Billy.
I'll be back.
Thank you.